Right, we are on that Kuf Yud Amud Beis. We're learning about zugos. Very fascinating. All right, we're going to start we're actually in the middle of a story. We're talking about who was Amemar met the head Machashefa. She was the Reish Tanihi, the Nashim Kashvaniyas. And he asked her, what if we bump into you guys, what should we do? So she gave him a formula to say, Chari Chamimi b'dikula b'zaya l'pumaychu, some hot soya in a torn basket should go to your mouth. Nashu decharaisha, perach karaichi, you should lose your hair, perach perachaichi, and wind should blow away the crumbs that you use to do your kishv. Ivder tavlu naichi, your spices should be mefuzah, should go away, and parcha zikul amerika chadata denaktisu. Some wind should blow away the new besamim, the new fragrance that you're wearing, or that you have a bottle of perfume. Nashim kashvaniyos adachanani v'chananichi loy asisi glagav. When Hashem had rachmanis on me, and you had rachmanis on me, so I didn't come. I had rachmanis on myself. I wouldn't come in contact with you people. But but now that I've come in contact with you, karachnini v'chanan naichi. I've been cooled down. The rachmanis, I guess, has been cooled down. Rashbam says, first line, v'hashd asisi lagav. Now that I've become to you, karachanini v'chan naichi hayel v'ubasi b'nechem. Since I've come amongst you, yedeya ani sheniskaru rachmeichem me'alai. So your rachmanas on me has cooled down. V'gam rachamai, my mercy on myself, niskaru shechasti alatzmi. I wasn't careful, so I ended up amongst you. Okay, that is what you're supposed to say.
Able to meet her?
One more time.
Why was all these weird things? Why is she doing these weird? Why is she telling him to do these weird things?
Well, this is what he's saying that you should say to the machashefes if you bump into them, and you don't want the kishv to affect you. So it sounds like you got to say this stuff, and then there's like a little bit of a admission of guilt at the end that I've only come in contact with you because if I was more careful, I wouldn't have come in contact with you.
You tell that all to the. You tell that all.
This was all said. I think that this was what you're supposed to say to the machashefes that you bumped into. Okay. B'ma'arava, 4 lines down from the top. B'ma'arava, leikapti azugi. In Eretz Yisrael, they were not makbid on zugim. Now this is later, because we clearly saw that the Tanoim were makbid on zugos. And they were saying that as time went on, we mentioned this from the Ben Yehuda yesterday, that as time went on, the koyach of the mazikin got weaker, and therefore b'ma'arava leikapti azugi, in Eretz Yisrael, they were not makbid anymore on zugim. Rav Dinim ben Ardai, kapid. In Nahardai, he was still kapid. Afilu arishuma de chavisa, even when he was marking his barrels, and hava'uvda upaka chavisa, he was marking his barrels, and he actually ended up in zugos, and a barrel burst. Okay, the Gemara says klol de milsa. Let me tell you the rule. Kol de kapid kapti b'hadei. If you're makbid on zugos, if you're overly makbid on zugos, then they'll come right after you. Udeloi kapid, and if you're not makbid on zugos, it means you don't pay attention to it. Like kapti b'hadei, then they won't be makbid on you, the mazikin. Umiyu, however, lemechash mibai, you should try to avoid it, but you shouldn't pay too much attention to it. That's what the Gemara says at this stage. Lemechash mibai. Now, the one interesting thing I saw in the Dirshu in Amud, so they said similarly, in ayin hara. When it comes to ayin hara, there are those that applied the same rule called lekapid lekapti bahadei, and that was in Reb Moshe, and they bring from Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky, and who said Rabbi Yashiv. They all said that this rule of kol delay kapid kapti ba'dei applies to ayin hara as well. And then he brings from Reb Chaim Kanievsky that that this is not true about ayin hara, and even if you're not chayshish for ayin hara, it could still do damage. So as a machlekes when it comes to ayin hara.
Can you accept this as a general good proposition for life?
Hold on 1 second. I was just reading from the Ian Ha'amid, which is this book that I got from Dirshu. I don't know if you can see that there. My father's on the phone.
Oh, okay.
You don't have one. So I was just reading from that book. That's in the Gemara. We are first word on the line is Lametash, about it's 10 lines down. 2, 4, 6, 8 lines down. Kuf Yud Amid Beis, 8 lines down. Okay. He also Rav Dimi. When Rav Dimi came, usually it means he came from Eretz Yisrael. Amar, he said the following: Shtei beitzim, 2 eggs. Shtei egazim, 2 eggs is a walnut. Shtei kishuin, and 2 zucchinis, or 2 gourds. Vidav racher, and there's one other thing that Halacha Moshe Sinai, we have a Messiah from Moshe from Sinai, that these are things you be makbid on zugos. So the Yesh Oyrim that even people who are not makbid on zugos should be machmir on these, on 2 eggs, 2 agazim, and 2 kishuin. Okay, what's this davracher? That's a problem. Nobody knew. Umistafkul Rabbanon, Mainihu davracher. The Rabbanon weren't sure what this davracher was. The Gazer Rabbanon Bekulu, Zugi Mishun Davracher. And the reason why we're makbid on everything is because they weren't sure what this Davracher was. So there were guys that you should always be makbid on Zugais because maybe that was what the Davracher was. Now, I've heard the Amr Nasar Tinaya Shita Arba Ein Ben Mishum Zugi. This that we mentioned previously. That when you have 10, 8, 6, and 4, you don't have to be makbid on zugos. Loi amron el inin mazikin. That's true only for mazikin. Aval inin kishvim. But when it comes to kishv, afilu tu v'nami chashinan. Then even if you're going to have more than that, you have to be concerned. And then Gemara brings a little story that tells us that kishv is you got to be more careful than mazikin.
What's the difference between mazikin and kishv?
Good question. I think kishv is specifically when there's a machashev. When there's a witch or someone is doing kishv, then you got to be concerned for it. Mazikin is more like shadim and stuff, I think. So there's like a general concern. Kishv is something specific, like we'll see in the story in a moment. Says the Gemara, Kiyahu Gavra, the Garsha L'Divsu. There was this man who divorced his wife. Okay. Azla, she went and Intzava L'Chanua. She married a storekeeper, or maybe a bartender. Kol Yema, every day, Hava Azal, this guy would go, the first husband, Vishasi Chamra, and he would go drink wine by this Chenvini, by the second husband's store. Okay. Hava Ka'abdalek Shavim. Now she was trying to do kishav on him. Whenever he'd come in, this machashefa, like kipshutai. And maybe that's where the term came from. I don't know. But she would try to do kishav on him. But it wouldn't work for it didn't work for her. Mishum to have a mizdar ben avshei bezuga, because he was careful not to drink zugos. He wouldn't drink a pair. He'd make sure his drinks were odd number. One day, ishti tuva, he drank too much. And he wasn't sure how much, what drink he was up to. Ad shitzar, until 16, havitzayil. He still had a clear mind. V'izdar ben avshei, and he was careful. Mikan ve'elach, but after 16, lehavitzayil, he didn't have a clear mind. V'izdar ben avshei, and he wasn't careful to make sure he didn't drink zugos. Apikte bezuga, and he left the store bezuga on an even number. You have a ozil. When he left the tavern, Gus Be'ahutaya, there was this Arab merchant who bumped into him, who recognized, who saw him. Amr Lay, and looked at him and he said, Gavra Katilahu, the Azlacha. There's a dead man walking around here. Azal, this is the first husband. Chavkela Dikla, he was hugging a tree. Savach Dikla, the tree shrunk, dried up, upakahu, and he exploded. So the kishv finally made its mark. So here we see that kishv will work even on more than 10. It was working on way over 16. The guy had more than 16 drinks, and the kishv was able to take hold, and he died. Okay. Amar of Avira, Rabbi Avira says, Ka'ares ukikres ein behem mishum zugos. Plates of food. If someone's bringing you plates of food, so you don't have to be concerned by the plates. If it brings out 2 plates of food, Ka'ares don't have zugos, and kikres, loaves of bread as well, 2 challah rolls. Rolls don't have an issue of zugos either. Ein behem mishum zugos. Klol the milsa. The general rule is kol shegamru bidei adam, something that was man-made, ein behem mishum zugos, does not have an issue of zugos. Gamru bidei shemayim, things that are natural. So then, gamru bidei shemayim b'mili mini demechel kashinon. Something that was that was naturally made, a food that was naturally made. And I think I read too much. 1 second. Ein behem mishum zugos. No, I think that's right. And then you have to be concerned for zugos. Okay, so the rule is something which is man-made, aim by mishum zugos, something that is that's why ka'ares, plates of food, or hikres, loaves of bread, don't have a problem of zugos. Now, you may wonder, we got into this whole sugya because of kaisis of yayin, because of wine. So would you say wine is man-made, or how is wine different than a loaf of bread? In both of them you have tipul. You need to put in, man needs to do something to make that happen. So one teretz is the Taisus Rid says that wheat you can't wheat to bread is different than grapes to wine, because a grape already has the juice in it. You're just basically extracting the juice and then letting it ferment. So that is considered still gamru bidei shemayim, as opposed to bread, where you got to take wheat. You can't just extract bread from wheat. There are many processes that need to take place to get you your bread. So that's the distinction made there. Yeah, I was
like
saying
the Gemara, right? It's like the Gemara. Was it the Gemara with Rabbi Antoninus?
That what?
Isn't that with the bread, where you have wheat or whatever it is, and that's in its present form, and the person needs to improve on it. He's questioning how does Hashem make everything? You're saying we have a perfect world, and then you need something which has to be improved upon.
That was by bread.
Yeah.
Yeah. So bread, I hear how. Yeah, the bread is good, and the only kasha was why is wine not considered Michael bidei, gamru bidei adam. So we're saying because it's already a fruit, it's already juice in the grape. And the bracha also is like that. Almighty, we make a bracha on wine or grape juice, by pri hagafen, that Hashem He creates the pri hagafen, the fruit of the vine, the pri hagafen, which we're making a bracha on wine, and the bracha of amaitzi lechem in arts. That's a very bit of a stretch. Hashem doesn't really take out bread from the ground. There is Rabbi Kiva Eger and brachas that talks about a medrash that bread before the chet of Itzadas, bread grew from the ground. Okay, back to zugos here. Okay, chanut ein behem mishum zugos. A chanut, a store, doesn't have an issue of zugos. Now, that's problematic because we brought a story. Oh, that could be true. The chanut before didn't have zugos. That means if you drink zugos in a tavern in a store, that's not a problem of zugos. The Gemara before was not talking about mazikin; it was talking about kishv. If you take a look, the Rashbam right to the side makes this distinction. So you take a look at the Rashbam. Chanut ein behem mishum zugos. He brings two pshatim. His first pshat is that if you drink in two different bars or different stores, that's like having 2 cups of wine. So that's his first pshat, that you went from one store and then to another store. Lashon acher, the ikar, the second pshat that he likes better, is chanut hashisa by zugos. No, you drink zugos in the chanut. But like kapti mazikin alei, the like kviyusi, that's not considered a kviyus. For some reason, mazikin, like they only harm you if there was a kviyus of zugos. Vahu uvda de la'el, the issue with this divorcee who got kishv done to him, who gathered the shasa bechanut kshafim shani, she'asa salai grushasi, that his ex-wife did it to him. So that's, again, I think the issue of kshafim is that they are present, they're there making the issues, as opposed to mazikin. Okay, back to the Gemara. That was chanut ein behem mishum zugos. Nimlach. If a guy changed his mind, he was only planning on having 1 cup, and then let's say he changed his mind and had another one, that's also ein behem mishum zugos. So if you change your mind, that is not a problem of zugos. And a yireach ein behem mishum zugos. A guest doesn't have a problem if you're being served. You don't have to be concerned with zugos. Rashbam says because you're like nimlach, you never know what they're going to serve you, so you're always nimlach. You're always, assuming you're not going to get, and then you'll get more. Okay, isha ein ba mishum zugos. A woman also doesn't have to be concerned for zugos. She's not. Rashbam says because she's not kivas lishtes. She doesn't have a kaviyas of drinking, but the isha chashuva. But if she's a chashuva woman, then chashinan, she should be concerned with zugos. Again, I guess an isha chashuva would be keveya, would sit down to have a drink or a few drinks. Amar braid of Yeshua. Asparagus, that is cabbage. It's not asparagus. I thought it was asparagus. Asparagus. That's what they say in Israel, I think, right? For asparagus. But the Rashbam says it's kruv. They said in Farsi, they call cabbage asparagus. So that's what we're talking about here. Now, Rashbam says that they would make a drink out of wine and cabbage. Any takers?
Sounds nasty.
Well, that's great, right? They actually drink it every morning for refuah. So that's what we're talking about over here. Asparagus was a wine cabbage drink that you drink for refuah purposes. So that would be mitzaref l'toiva, ve'ein mitzaref l'ra. So that would help you if you had 2 and you had this as your 3rd drink. So that would be fine. Even if you had another one, you'd be okay. But it's not mitzaref l'ra. So if this was your 2nd drink, that wouldn't be mitzaref. Amar Ravina Mishmei de Rava, zugi lechamra. I'm sorry, zugi lechumra. Ve'amrila zugi lekula. Meaning, what do you do if you're not sure what number you're up to? Should you have 1 more drink, just in case, or should you not? Well, okay. That's the shayla. So, Rashbam, let's take a look at the first wide line in the Rashbam. Zugi l'chumra. If you don't know if you drank zugos or not, yishta, have another drink. If you had already zugos, so then hayil v'daita l'tzarfan mitzarfan l'toiva. V'yim la'ishasa zugos nimlach v'enim mitzarf l'ra. So if you already had, you're up to an even number, and this is going to make it odd, so that's great. And if you didn't, if you actually were at an odd number, this was going to make it even, well, you already weren't planning on drinking, and now you're going to have another drink. That's like nimlach. That's like changing your mind and having another drink. So therefore, it won't count to your it won't make you zugos. That is zugi lechumra. V'amila zugi lekula. Rashbam says that lo yishta. Why? Because by drinking, you're showing that you're makbid on zugos. They're even the cupid galiyadaita the cupid on zugos. Now you're showing that you're makbid. And if you were like at an odd number, and now you're making it zugos, and I feel bezugas even if this is making, even if you ended up having a zug, you're showing that you're makbid, so maybe they'll leave you alone. So that's the reason why you would go lakula, because you don't want to show that you're makbid as zugos. Okay. Amar Rav Yosef. What happens if I had 2 cups of wine and 1 beer? Shikra is not real beer. Shikra was like, remember, we saw shikra, we call it shikra beer, but it's really like this date drink. So 2 of chamra and 1 of shikra, loy mitzdarif. You can't join it together because chamra is more chashiv than shikra. So the shikra is not going to help you out for your 2 cups of wine. But if you trade the shikra v'chad the chamra, that's mitzdarif because it's more chashiv. The Amemar gives you a siman from the halachas of tum and tahar. Zakla, this is the rule. The rule is like this: if you have like a piece of material, a beged, so depending on what it's made out of, will depend on how large it needs to be considered a beged and be makabel tumah. The more chashiv the material, the smaller it can be. So the rule is there that kol mechuber lo min hachamor mimenu tamei. If you have a more chamer material attached to a less chamer material, so then that will count. That will add to the size of that material. But if it's the opposite, min hakal mimenu, if you're attaching something which is kal, so then meaning which requires a larger size, so then that won't be mitzdarif to something that only requires a smaller size, and it will remain tahar. So the same thing here. If you're drinking something more chashiv, then it is mitzdarif. If you're drinking something that is less chashiv, then it's not mitzdarif. Amar Rav Nachman, a similar halacha. Amar Rav. Trei kama. If you had 2 drinks before you started the meal, trei kama taka. You had 2 before your suuda. Bechad ataka, and 1 during the suuda. Mitzdarfi, that will be mitzdarf, because the wine that you drink before the meal is not as chashiv as wine that you drink during the meal, because wine before the meal is just there to get your appetite going. It's not as chashiv as the wine you drink during the meal, which is to be part of your meal. And therefore, if it was chad mekamitaka, if you had 1 drink before the meal, b'trei ataka, and then 2 during the meal, le mitzdarfinan, they're not going to be mitzdarf because the one before the meal is not as chashiv as the 2 you had during the meal. Maskevler of Misharsha interjects. What do you mean? Who cares about the meal? Are we trying to fix this guy's table? We want to make sure the guy himself doesn't have zugos. The gaver kamitkan, so you might say you didn't have zugos. Who cares when you drink the wine? Okay. But everybody agrees. Kuli alma trei ataka v'chad lebasar taka. After the meal, drinking after the meal does not count for drinking during the meal, because that's already a new bit. That's after the meal. If you're drinking after the meal, that's already considered almost like nimlach. So we're not going to count that as part of your meal drinks. Okay, fine. I don't know. That's what I got up to. Okay. We did the Amid on a snow day. Good for us. Okay. We'll continue with this exciting Agadata Gemara and Metz Hashem tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Welcome to